All right, good morning. My name is Ann Zarlingo. I'm the Director of Staff Development and Training here for High Point. I know I met a lot of you last Monday, but some of you I didn't meet, so I'll just give you a little intro. I've been here at High Point for about 15 years now. I started as the Director of HR. We were pretty small then. We had about 175 staff and about 3 programs, so right now we're up to 1,700 staff. And probably a little more now with this program, and 36 different programs. So we're always excited to start new frontiers, and a lot of that has to do with Daniel Mumbo, our CEO, and I'm sure your senior members of your senior management group to be involved with this initiative. And so I've been working in behavioral health addictions for about 25 years myself. The main population I worked with was adult males in the halfway house residential program. I was a clinician there, my first and favorite job, and also was a program director there for quite a few years. And I still do some outpatient work. I still sort of keep in there, but right now I'm doing mostly coordinating the trainings we have here, our LADC school we have here, which I always plug for our employees. Anyone wanting to get their LADC free, we offer the courses here. And other miscellaneous HR things that happen to be coming up. So anyway, I'll have to be honest about this is whenever we open a new program, it always seems like a lot of things, and I'm sure you've experienced where you've worked, it happens really quickly. Right? And I'm trying to email Jennifer Gearhart and other people who do community-based work or directors, and just make sure I'm on target as to what you'll be doing, because I haven't done community-based work. Now I know when we met last Monday, I did a very general anti-violence training, so some of this is going to overlap that, but I'm trying to focus it on community-based populations that are being served. So, let's go. So do you have tomorrow off? No. All right, these are some of the things I'm going to be going over. I've got some handouts, actually. We already did number 1, so we're already through that. But I really wanted to try to find a lot of information, and I went to NIOSH and OSHA. I went to the VNA website, the visiting physicians website. I wanted to get some YouTubes around situations that are actually happening in community-based work. And I probably, between last week and this week, spent maybe 3 hours, and I could not find anything. I found a lot, which was significant, around nursing and the risks associated with nursing, which overlapped quite a bit, but it was very focused, and some of it was also then, based on with hospitals, doing community-based work and going in and out of hospitals or ERs. So I don't like when I don't have any YouTubes or videos, but I don't. So we'll have to do that ourselves. So I tried. So we're just going to go with this. Now, you already had trauma-informed training, correct? Do you have?
Yes.
Yep. And was that based on the populations you're working with, or was it a general trauma-informed care training? Because I know we offer them here.
General.
It was general. Okay. And I just wanted to see what that was. And I want to see what concerns you have as well. So here we go. So one of the things I wanted to just talk about a little bit is about where this all came from. And I'm not sure if, I really would have liked to have gone to that training, but I'm not sure if they went into, there's going to be overlap, my apologies. But really a lot of the initiative and the requirements of, I'll just say AV training, was based on a lot of different reasons. It was the decentralization of psychiatric hospitals into community-based markets, and an attempt at that point in time, it was really back in the Kennedy administration, due to a family member that they had who was severely mentally ill and was placed in institutions that were not healthy. And as they started to investigate all this, they realized that there was a lot that wasn't going on, that should have been going on in a lot of the institutions then, and also conversely. So what happened is they said, let's try to do this in a community-based effort, which was excellent, but they didn't have the structure, the infrastructure. They didn't have the infrastructure. And so we saw a lot of other individuals, right, trying to come in with severe psychiatric, even psychiatric illnesses into agencies that didn't have the training, the staff didn't have the proper education they need, and it didn't work very well. It worked somewhat well, but not. So therefore, we have more people in the community, less places to place them inpatient, and now we're going back into a balance where there's just so much more proficiency. Look at what community-based workers are doing now across the state. And I know, just for High Point, for our little agency, I mean, I think we're probably upwards to 200 individuals working in the community in different programs that we have. All right, so, and again, a lot of the anti-violence initiatives started because of a highly publicized death of a social worker up on the North Shore working in a community-based home who was transporting a client that they'd worked with for 15 years. And OSHA was very involved. And they were in that agency for almost a year and a half investigating. And what happened at that point in time was that the CEO of that organization, who was the organization's excellent organization, Happen Anywhere, of course had everybody to look into things and complete the investigation. But what they also found was OSHA at that point in time was just starting to look into keeping employees safe in the work environment and behavioral health, which was new to them. They did not realize the challenges we face on a day-to-day basis in behavioral health. And so she started presenting across the state through the Association for Behavioral Health, which some of your agencies are involved in, we're involved in, and to administrators, HR, senior management, and the first presentation she made in wherever, Westboro, wherever it was, it packed. You couldn't even get into that room. Because it's significant. The risks are significant. They're higher than they've ever been before. And it has to be a major concern of every agency. So that now has, you look at all the regulatory requirements from all of these agencies, they're all in there. The anti-violence training requirements, having a very detailed anti-violence training policy, which I'm sure many of your agencies do. We do, and conducting these kinds of trainings minimally it has to be every 2 years, minimally every year. So that's how this all started. And there is more information, more support, and more guidelines than we've ever seen before. And probably aware we've got Jacob coming everywhere next week in our facility. And so HR, we're making sure that all our training things are done. And we've got to pull everything out again also for our whole anti-violence initiative. Because their segments and their requirements for AVI is significant. And it keeps increasing. Anyway, you may have remembered I put this in as well, and that's defining the workplace, which is every aspect of what you do. A lot of you, my assumption is that you're going to have a home base, right? That you may be there sometimes, not every day, some days, I'm not sure. So you'll be going into the building. You'll be having the situations that we may have talked about last Monday, and probably whatever agency you're working with will always, also have the codes or signals. I don't know what each agency uses if you have an active shooter in the workplace, right? So you have that already in place. So that's what's going on in the building. And what we talked about last Monday is also not just between employee and client, but employee and employee, employee in domestic violence situations, employees and other employees and family. So here we're just going to focus on what you're going to be doing out in the community. So that's field location, members' homes, and traveling to and from work assignments. So I pulled out a lot of stats, sorry. So BLS, the majority of injuries they talk about, you see that in the back? I used all the same colors, I don't know why. So I just averaged this out. Assaults. So this is healthcare and social service. About 24,000 annually. And upwards of 74% in healthcare and social service, which is what we do. So, and for healthcare workers, and a lot of times the stats are combined, then you have days away from work, okay? So for our industry, the caregiving industry, is 10% days away from work due to assaults or threats, okay? And it's compared to only 3% of all other industries. So we've got 3 times this going on. I was looking at those YouTubes and I was like, oh my God, I couldn't look at them anymore. I had to turn it off last night at 8 o'clock, go home. I said, I can't look at any more of those workplace violence videos. So here's some more with NIOSH. All right, so this is included is physical assaults and threats of assaults directed toward persons at work or on duty. And again, you've got about a quarter of 100 fatalities in healthcare and social service settings were due to assault and violent acts. So they had a whole segment on, I just put everything together as community-based workers. I want to try to use some of this material for every community-based program we have here. So I just used that, their terminology that kept coming through the literature. So you're more vulnerable to violent assaults. Okay, and we're going to talk about why, and I'm going to ask you what you think is going to be helpful. I also have a survey, and we'll also put together a safety manual that people can use as a guideline that I did send out to Jennifer and some to start working on, and just give you some things that you might already know about, but had some interesting ideas that really came about from one of our program directors, 2 of our program directors of our initial CSP program put this safety manual together for community-based workers. Each time you go into the community and the home. I'm not going to just show you stats, I know, but I put it out there, you know this. Those of you who are just starting, it's good to know this. Again, assaults, 5.5 per 10,000 full-time workers, more than twice the rate of any other worker in the United States. So, NIOSH risk factors, again, CBPs, who support members with psychiatric and substance abuse disorders. Hello, right? That's what you're doing? Yes? The more time spent in the patient homes also increases the risk. So I also was trying to ascertain, and anybody, give me input because we're going to have more employees coming on board and it's helpful. But You are going to be providing services in the home. You're doing counseling in the home with individuals. And then I wanted to ascertain also how much of the family's going to be involved. Is that would be part you would know up front, or they may be added on, or just individuals?
Mostly individuals, but we'll see. If the
We'll
family's
see.
involved, then they might be involved in the treatment plan. And so, and our folks won't actually be doing counseling.
Okay.
It's more like going out and figuring out the services they need and then calling other people. Yeah, coordinating with them.
Coordinating care.
Yep.
Okay. But they may be around.
Yep.
Just those. Okay. Thanks. That's what I said. He said, well, there'll be a little of this and a little of that. And NICE had a whole section about the employer underestimating the risk to the workers and sometimes overestimate the support they receive. And obviously, you're going to see some of the stats, right, when they're coming through, are not totally up to date. These are in their most current publications, but I think we've done a lot better with this, and I think we always need to improve anything to do with employee safety. That's my little HR hat. So again, private residences where engineering controls may not be possible. So I said I have the whole section on engineering controls. You know, we can't do what we can do in buildings about safety engineering controls, right? Like panic buttons and moving furniture around so you can exit and getting things in place. Or I did inquire that you will have phones. You all have your own phones. So the question I have, so I'm thinking of it now because I also had sent an email. So, is there the ability to track where an employee is on their phone if they're in distress? Do you know if that is being set up or part of the system?
We don't know.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. It's yeah. I didn't know because there's those options are there. I don't know, but I asked that question yesterday and I don't know, so I figured I'd ask today. Because there are things that can be put in place, and there's all different types of obviously things you can do when you have a building or you have a parking lot that's yours, but when it's not yours, will you ever be meeting them in a nearby restaurant? Out of the library, wherever you can. Okay, so you can be anywhere at any point in time, and anything can be going down, so to speak. Oh,
Exactly.
I'm sorry. Your people actually. Gee, I think I'll go back to my office and desk. All right. So you have unprotected and unpredictable environment each time you enter any place you're going. And included in the definition of violence, all right, is anything from verbal abuse to stalking, threats of assault, all the way up to homicide. And threaten not only to the employee, but to their vehicles, or if they get to be known too well, to maybe their family, or maybe themselves, even after the client-coordinator relationship has ended. So I'm going to ask you information about your experience with this, but I'll just this. All right, so here's another definition. Verbal abuse from the client, family members, or people in the community is a form of workplace violence. Anybody have verbal abuse? Family members? Yeah. Abused by dogs? They get abused by dogs? I remember when Jennifer Gearhart first came on board, and she had her whole big program doing this for years. And I said, Jennifer, what's like the most severe risk factor? Well, I said, what is it? And she said, Ann, we had more physical problems with dog bites, and it's actually in the community-based manual about not to be too friendly too soon with the dog. I said, are you kidding? She said, well, I said, well, that's good. It's good. So, and then, how about the second, after that, you know, such as, you ever been in a situation where they've asked for something outside of the scope of your job? I thought that was interesting. Can you give me any examples? Yeah, a few hands. Yep, and then you.
One woman wanted me to be godmother for the child.
Do you want to be a godmother? You to be the godmother for the child.
She
Okay.
took a no nicely, but she wanted me.
She would like that. Is that a little dual relationship there, a little ethical thing? But that was a nice gesture. Did you?
Yeah, well,
Maybe. Well, maybe. I shouldn't assume. Okay. And yourself, what did they want? What would they
Money
like?
for food.
They wanted money for food. Anybody been asked for money for food or items for the house? How is that for you? I mean, this is obviously an ethical piece. What happens with that?
I gave them addresses of food banks.
Yeah, you give them resources.
Yeah.
We're caregivers. We're passionate. Do we want to get? Gosh, we want to bring some food in. Hey, right? Gift cards, right? Things like that. Has that been difficult for people who've done this before? Do you have a set of ethics around community? I wonder if you have at least like a set of ethics for community-based workers.
we have guidelines.
You have guidelines. Okay. All right. So that's part of our already things that are already established that you're aware of. That I just never thought of because I'm a newbie to community-based work. I said, oh my God, I would have a hard time with this. I really would. Do they want to like cook for you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do they? Cause I'm sorry, I was raised Italian. Everybody, you want to cook for everybody, no matter if you're hungry or not. So I mean, it just would bring. Yeah, a lot of the. I mean, it's significant. And the impact. I'm into cultural sensitivity. My cultural sensitivity training. Stop it, Ann. The impact not being able to engage in some of the things ethically, but it's so important to them and trying to help them understand that, wow, this is wow. So this question, how many have been seriously threatened here, or your property seriously violated by a client or former client? No one, no one, a few, okay. I'll start in the back.
Hi,
Oh, all right.
Bridgewater State Hospital.
Oh, there's one, either one. There's two of you. Did you have your hand up?
I did.
Yes.
I was transporting a client and I got T-boned at an intersection. And then right before 3 years after that was over, she sued me.
Oh, she sued you.
Because the person went through a green, red light. So that was rough.
Okay. 3 years later.
Yeah, right before the statute of limitation was over. I mean, she was still my client at the time.
Wow.
Borderline personality disorder.
Ah.
I didn't have to see her again. It was the only good.
All right, thank you. And yourself?
I used to work at Bridgewater State Hospital, and it wasn't uncommon for the staff to be assaulted regularly.
Yeah, still happening.
Yeah, in hospital basis, yeah, psychiatric hospitals, yeah. And who else did you, okay,
I had a woman who wanted housing,
wanted housing?
and one of the clients that had housing had died like 2 days prior to her coming into the office to threaten me physically. So that was a lot of fun.
She wanted the housing because this client had passed.
Right.
And you couldn't obviously, didn't have the ability to do that. And she threatened you, or he threatened you?
Yes, she did.
And what, mind repeating, what she threatened? Did she threaten?
Physical violence.
Physical
Because
violence,
she
okay.
didn't get the house.
She didn't get the house, okay.
So.
That's amazing, must be doing an excellent job. How about going in, say they're in, they're not maintaining what they need to do for their psychiatric diagnosis, if they're off their meds, or you walk in and they're under the influence, obviously you have protocols you have in place. You leave. I'll bring that up later. Okay, that's amazing. Let's do an excellent job. Okay. So, one of the things that comes to mind is there are overt threats, there's posturing, there's people who are upset, there may be verbal situations going on. I'm trying not to get distracted, but that's hard for me. But there's also the level of some level of vulnerability being out and about, I would assume, and that may increase, but it's always probably not always there. But I would think, I mean, just from myself, I'm learning more from you. I'm sorry, I have to give you, to a bartering thing here or something. But I would think that over time for some individuals, going into certain communities and just having to be sort of hypervigilant, not in an unhealthy way, can be draining as far as risk factors. Has anybody experienced that? Yeah? Okay.
On my old job.
At your old job. Anybody else, or is it just second nature?
I feel like for me, so I worked at DYS for a
Yeah.
while, with male juvenile offenders, like lockup in Roxbury. And so for me, it became more like second nature, and I was used to it. And when I went to my new job,
Yeah,
it was a bit of a culture shock.
yeah.
I remember the first day at my new job from there, when I was walking around seeing the agency, and there was a pair of scissors on the table.
Oh,
And we walked by, and I looked at the person training me, I'm like, that's not okay, like, you can't just leave scissors out like that. I meant it, I was very serious,
Yeah,
and then she's
yeah.
like, what are you talking about?
Get the staplers out.
So just
It
because
pays.
it's used
No
to it,
pencils, yeah.
It was just like, I became used to that,
Yeah.
you know, that
There
kind
you
of
go.
setting. And
Yeah, you do. Yeah, it's amazing. I remember that. Actually, there was, because brought to mind when I first started doing a lot of the trainings in New Bedford at our Women's Addiction Treatment Center, our Section 35 women's program for addiction, and I remembered they said, make sure, okay, and they had to take everything out of the environment, and don't leave paper clips on the tables or in the, you just, until you do it, you don't think of it. Now it's like, I don't have paper clips anywhere. You don't leave them anywhere, you don't leave them in the trash. Not, obviously, we got a lot of self-injurious behavior, I'm sure you've experienced that, but also it was around weapons. Because we still do that in a lot of our environments. Anything that can be picked up and moved, things that, we've had to secure, you don't see even upstairs in a lot of places, anything nailed to walls or hangers or wires and so you're working in an environment that's everything is there. So, anybody else? Yeah.
I just think one thing to be mindful of is when you join home-based work is, people come to do this work with different life experiences and different tolerances for, safety and, so just, if you're used to, doing work in, housing projects that might be pretty tough areas, and you've kind of not numbed yourself, but kind of known to just like overlook some things, that's when you need to talk to your supervisor, because sometimes you might be putting yourself at risk because your guard is down and you're not feeling like you need to be on alert. So those are things to kind of talk to your supervisor about, because what I might feel is threatening is very different from what you might feel is threatening, but the threat is real, and so it's really important that you kind of hash that out with your supervisor about knowing yourself and the communities that you're working in and being open about that.
So you're hearing that we sometimes get sort of, desensitized, I guess, or just don't think of it as much as somebody. And who else had a hand up? Yeah, share, I don't know anything.
So to speak to that, I had been working at a family shelter, and I worked there about a year, and our staff bathroom at the time was in the community kitchen. And so the staff bathroom door opened to where the door opened outside. So if you put the door to the outside against the staff bathroom door, you could trap somebody in there. Needless to say, I got trapped in the bathroom
Okay.
by the people in the kitchen. I wasn't nervous about it. I kind of unfortunately thought it was funny.
Yeah.
It wasn't funny, but I wasn't worried about it.
Yeah.
I called to them and I said, you need to let me out. I'm gonna call Paula, who was my supervisor at the time. And if you don't let me out, I'm gonna call 911. And they're just like, yeah, whatever. So I called my boss and I said, I'm just gonna go out the window, because it was low to the ground. And she's like, don't you dare call 911. I'm like, but I can climb out the window. She's like, no, call 911. So I called to 911, and as they pulled up, and they knew where I was,
Yeah.
as they pulled up, they opened the door,
Yeah.
of course. But my boss was livid with me. She's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You've got to climb out the window. What's the matter with you? And but
This is all in a day's work,
Right.
right?
And to me, it was no big deal, because the window was low to the ground, and, you know, I just didn't think anything of it.
It's only 2 stories, no problem. Flat.
Needless to say, shortly after that, they remodeled the kitchen, and the staff bathroom went
Good.
inside the offices.
Good, yeah. We spent a lot of money on that. You just, it's so things you don't think, and like you get desensitized. And back here.
I think there's a lot more involved than just the physical violence too, especially with doing home visits. I mean, there's a lot of safety issues, like, you know, possibly sitting on fabric furniture, getting needle sticks, or picking up bed bugs. And you always really should be asking, when going to home, asking who else is in the house. Because you don't know if all the people they're using with ran in the other room. And, you know, so it really goes much more in depth. And even down to your attire or your manner of dress, you know, either dressing provocatively or wearing flashy jewelry. You know, it goes so much deeper
Thank you.
for safety.
You should have come to my office the last week or two, and we could add, I'm gonna ask people to add some things in with this, with the survey. Who else had their hand up? Did someone else? Oh, they're over here. Nope, I got it. I'm here. Because I want to add some things as you. So come back, like in an hour. All right. So I'm gonna put that in there too. Yeah, so it's all the dress code. You have specific times that are you doing some evening work? Or is it mostly during the day?
Could be 9 to 5.
Very good. Okay. So, so obviously, we see impact of, again, threat, we see impact of, you know, having to have the, I say the antenna up a lot, and sometimes they get tired. But we see this, you know, in HR, we see this in a lot of different capacities where people are just get really tired and stressed, and sometimes have to make a change in their work environment or the population they serve, and that's healthy, because a lot of times people will just, and I find in HR, is that people will just really push themselves to the limits and just try to constantly probably do more than they're capable on a day-to-day basis, because some days where I know for me, some days I'm at like 95%, and boy, try to use those days up because they don't happen as often as they used to, and some days I'm at 40%, right? But if someone finds that, you know, they're constantly trying to do more than where they are with their stress saturation point, which I go over in the ethics training, they burn. Or you're going to see increased absences, morale, lower morale, right? Burnout, a lot of times the biggest piece for staff is to say, you know, Ann, I just don't, I've lost my passion. I'm indifferent. That's the word I've heard. I'm indifferent. I find myself saying the same thing to different clients, like almost in rote. And thank goodness they identify it. You know, because we lose that. What else we have? And we all go through that, I'm sure, right? People here, you go to, sometimes you're just, and then sometimes you're just going through the motions. But overall, it's there. But this is what happens. Feeling of vulnerability, increased turnover rate, anger, okay? Or mistrust of employers. And not just in this organization, we've done EAP work and things like that in other behavioral health organizations or worked in other agencies, the same type of thing would happen. That employees will say that I'm not feeling supported, right? I'm feeling really not just vulnerable about the risk situation, but I'm not feeling supported. I'm just being pushed in 15 different directions and I just can't do it anymore. And we've had situations where there has been employees who've experienced levels of risk, threat, or violence, and for some reason, just in the environment, the community they were working with, even in the clinic or what have you, you know, that to sit with them and to debrief them or to ascertain if they're going to continue or if they want to desire to continue to work in the industry. Some of them need to take a break. It's just been too many things, you know. That's why we took a lot of locks off a lot of doors so nobody could get locked into places and did a lot of environmental things that, but we all are still human beings. So we want to try to reduce this type of thing. And obviously patient care. And they also included, that was a different issue, obviously if people start not feeling safe, all right, they may limit the length of time they spend with their, you call them members, correct? I saw both. I didn't know what he came up with, but I saw them both there. They may limit the length of time or reduce the number of visits. We like to spend time with good clients, right? Good clients? You've seen this before, I put it back up here as well. This is just showing that it encompasses all of those things, okay? And I think it also can actually, when you're working with other employees, if you hear something that they've experienced. And some days we can experience a situation and feel very uncomfortable about it, and some other days it's like, oh, I'm going to get a cup of tea. It's, right? It's like you were saying, it's no big deal. And what is going to impact you and you and you and myself are very different as far as feeling vulnerable or having the effects. Because a lot of times, as we know, this is what we do, it's going to be a delayed response, right, to a traumatic experience or a traumatic situation or a traumatic feeling for many staff. It's not going to happen right away. It might happen over, a week later, 2 weeks later, or it can trigger other things that have happened to them in their history that start impacting their work, and they need to usually get referred out for some professional help. Because that vulnerability for individuals who've had that life experience, we know is going to bring up, even for staff, not getting into their personal information, but happens that now I'm being triggered by all of the things that have happened to me in my past, and usually they get referred to the AP, because that can happen, right? And boy, do we need to know that. Because like you said, somebody could walk in the room now and say something, and some people would be like, ho-hum, and everybody else, that's it, here's my badge, I'm gonna go work down the street, right? So, all right, just go. Now, I just put 3 slides in trauma-informed care because I wasn't sure how much or what it was about. But all this is, as you know, everybody you work with has trauma. This I put in again just to show the fight or flight response and trying to be aware, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of information before you get out and you start seeing your clients and you've had the experience with them. And you're also going to be doing, you're also going to, with your own internal, do you call it nurses? Do you call yourself nurses? You have a special title because you're doing medication monitoring, right? Auditing or something. Okay. So they've got all types of medications, correct, in the house. Some they should, some they shouldn't, right? So they're going to have an overreaction to any kind of stress trigger. So you may have already talked about this, but what may just be a couple of examples that you've had that has occurred to people who've done this for a while of unknowingly triggering a client because of their trauma history and having them overreact to a situation because of their trauma history. Yeah.
When I was an intern, I was watching a male run a group, and the woman, or he was actually doing an intake, and the woman there seemed to be under the influence, but she wasn't. She was just disassociating from the trauma.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Was he ever aware of it? Hopefully.
I mean, after she had come back the following day or a
Then
few
he
days later,
realized.
met with a woman that kind of was like a,
Yeah.
oh shit.
Yeah. So there it is. So similarly, walking into a home or meeting a client. Have you might have not have been you, but other people who've done similar work? What's happened? What's happened? I mean, like you said, clothes, right? Maybe some clothes. Touching a client, right? What's your protocol on the touch of a client? You have a no-touch rule?
It should be.
All right, do you have anything? Because I couldn't see anything about that.
There's nothing in writing that says we can't, but it's,
Okay.
yeah.
No, just talking, because we just talking about it at the ethics committee, I mean, you didn't have the crisis, you don't do CPI training or, did you do that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I just retired from that after like 15 years. I'm thrilled. I loved the training, but it's time to, a little young blood. Yeah. But, if you're doing a CPI training, they'd say, well, we have a no-touch rule. And I said, well, if you're here doing CPI training, and that is what you're being told, then you really shouldn't be here at CPI training, because if you get trained to do CPI or CPR or Narcan, you got to do it. So there's this whole thing because every place is different, so we're actually looking at it, and we have a specific ethics and boundaries brochures for different employee populations, and that one is always like, well, yes and no. But has anybody ever, would that impact somebody, right, in a negative way with their trauma history?
Yes.
Right?
Sure.
Okay, so have you been aware of that happening for people who are starting? Is there any have words of wisdom about, do you ask to hug them? Do you not hug them? Do you touch them? Do you rub them on the back? Do you let them kiss you on both cheeks if they're where the country they're from? What do you do? Share.
I think it's individualized.
Individualized, okay. That's
By
it.
person. I mean,
Yeah.
if a little kid's hugging you, I
Yeah,
don't
the kids.
see any harm in that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I might not want, somebody's spouse doing it to me.
Okay.
That's happened.
Yeah, and that's happened, okay,
know?
someone's, so, again, and you may have already shared these things, like we've already talked about it, and be quiet, okay, that's fine. But for people as are starting, just these little heads up is, it's, that individualized, or maybe not, it's tough, and you've heard me before, when in doubt, don't. It's so hard. And yeah, we have different policy for our family centers and family programs than we do for others. Yeah, thank you.
I think it's always err on the side of caution,
Yeah.
and, so touching really should be completely off limits. not just because they could have trauma history, which are triggered,
Mhm.
but my feeling is so easy for somebody to make an
An
allegation.
allegation?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
You want to protect yourself that way as well.
Yes. Yes, and we have those, right? Oh my gosh. Ah, all right. Thanks. So all we're, again, just always, like I like that, yeah, on the side of caution, because we don't know what will happen. I had someone at New Hire training a couple months ago, so, you know, we're here every Tuesday, or whatever day we're here, Monday and Tuesday, and she was just starting, and she had that community-based work for years, and she told the story that she was just bringing her patient or whatever, the resident to an appointment, and she says, I'm just driving, and all of a sudden she starts stabbing me. She's been working with like 10 years with this woman. And what had happened is, and again, she did, you know, she followed the protocol. She changed her perfume. And you can't walk around with just, you know, robotic. But again, the perpetrator was the mother, and that was the perfume she wore. So, trigger, you know, clothes, faces, gender, statements, jokes. It's very hard till you get to know them, or things that cannot sit well with us. You know, right? Our personal space. You know, I'm really not comfortable with somebody, you know, rubbing my back and, you know, just touching hair, which is very intimate. Do you ever have somebody come up and like touch your hair? Oh, that's one of the most intimate touch is hair, they say. So just to think of that, we have to be aware of what our boundaries are around those things that can impact us. So that's it on the trauma-informed. I just wanted to throw a few things in there. So the other thing you get into, obviously, is knowledge of safety. You're not going to know about everybody, which is great, of who's going to be in there, what they've been doing, where they're going to have come from, where they're going to be going. And so it's getting as much information, which it sounds like you're going to have everything integrated electronically, right, with a lot of information about the client.
At first, not.
No.
At first, we'll get a bunch of people, and we
Yeah.
probably won't have a lot of personal info on them.
All right, so something you'll obtain and input, okay. And share, you can, it's, okay, great, okay, good. All right, so the more information we know, it's best. Informed care. So, obviously, what percentage of clients have trauma? 100? Okay. So you've got the dual diagnosis, you've got the trauma history, you've got the medical complications, and then you've got family members and visitors, and I don't know who else may be around, or you're going into the library or the, you know, wherever you go to meet with somebody, and who knows what can be going on anywhere. So one of the things that I think that we're always doing with strength-based care is focusing on the unbelievable survival mechanisms that individuals we work with have to still be living, right? And breathing. And so the whole model of individualized care and you know, ensuring that you know, that we're working beyond any bias, and having that cultural humility in place is really important around looking at their strengths, right? Which is what we do. Years ago wasn't something we did as often. It was, what did you do wrong? Or how come you didn't do? How come you didn't follow that? And why did you pick up again? And why did you not take your psych meds? And why didn't you do this? And how dare you, right? Even with the, how dare you relapse? It's like, excuse me, it's not relapsed. It's how many days did you abstain? And to celebrate that, and to use it as a strength-based model for the clients. So I don't know if you want to look at this one. I got a little YouTube. I don't think I showed it last week. This is a YouTube. It is about trauma-informed care. You want to see it so you don't have to listen to me for a minute? Okay. I'm showing it anyway, so I have a few more slides in the book. I'll show it. This is a YouTube around trauma-informed care, and the focus is, it's on the utilization of the strengths that an individual develops, even though they've had a lot of trauma, a lot of unresolved anger going on with them, okay? And so it's a real short one, and it's a life experience. It's a few years ago, but it's a life experience that has occurred with an individual going for their doctorate in trauma-informed care. And basically, it's something that occurs in New York City. Don't want to give you the whole plot. But he's trying to focus on the individuals he's involved with in this situation probably have had some pretty traumatic backgrounds, probably have some anger. And all it's showing is looking at the positive side versus the negative side. Right? Which I think everybody is probably doing. It's just a little anecdote. If I can get this up and running and make sure that they've got. Or someone can come out and be very angry. Yes. Hopefully they have visitor spots. I don't know what I took out of number 4. Transporting a client who's escalating. Does that ever happen for people? Do you have to if they're in a psychiatric crisis, what do? You just 911.
There's an emergency service program as well,
Yeah.
so 911, emergency service.
Okay, so ESP 911, are those pre-programmed into your phone for speed dial? Just a thought. If there's an incident, okay, if there's a situation where you dial 911 and you don't get the response time that you need, that's going to be that we expect. You put that on any incident reports you're creating. Yeah. Okay, because that's important. Because I know, I need to say we, I'm sure all agents do, we track time from contact to any law enforcement or any safety entity and how long it takes to get to our sites, because some are excellent, but once in a while, right, they'll show up and then they're thinking it's the staff person in crisis, or there's a whole crisis going on, they don't know who's what, and it's delayed. And so those kinds of things come up. We just file formal complaints. We'll be down in the chief of police office and everything else. And yes, am I in? I can go on. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to just keep safe. Okay, all right. So no one has to bring a client to the ER or anything. You don't get it done. What if they have a medical crisis when they're in your vehicle? Pull over. Look at this. Okay. It's right in the policy, the driving policy, because that's what I was going to look at. Well, this is high points. Number 24. Provide a first aid kit.
Well, emergency.
Emergency, whatever you call it. Wow. Okay. Anything else?
One of the things that we did at the shelter is we had a list of the local police numbers.
Yep.
And when we drive, we have it in the glove box of the car because your cell phone gets connected to the closest tower and sometimes it takes forever to get to wherever you need to go. So we have the local phone numbers in the glove box of the car or on the console. And it's their vehicle, but it doesn't hurt to make, you know, your area, if 911's not good or whatever, to have the numbers in the car.
So I know in our anti-violence policy, we do suggest, especially if people know what area they're gonna be working in, is that it's not just a 911, the speed dial is to the local law enforcement agency, so you don't have to go through dispatch. But I didn't know, you know, if you'd be traveling in a lot of different areas, if that would be applicable, but as much in there as you can, yeah. Thank you, I got that down. There were a couple other things actually I took out because one of the PDs emailed me back. So, a client is escalating in the car. Don't be afraid to leave your car. Anybody have left the car, left the client in there escalating? That's what one of our community-based work PDs indicated. They indicate to staff. What have you done in the past when you've worked in community-based programs? Do you stay with the client in the car? Yeah?
Oh, I worked with the developmentally delayed adults, so I couldn't just, like, I could leave the car, but I couldn't go pretty much past that.
Yeah.
But like, one suggestion is make sure you have your keys, because I got locked out of the car one time that it happened. So that was quite interesting, because she wouldn't let me back in the car. Luckily, it wasn't my own, but still.
Okay.
Well,
Any other thoughts?
It depends on a case-by-case basis, because if there's threat of bodily harm, then yes,
Yes.
you can leave the vehicle. Otherwise, it's considered abandonment.
Abandonment. Yeah. So there's a sense of threat. That was real, because actually emailed a few times back and forth on that. It is individualized, but if you're sitting there and someone's escalating and they're at a point of threat, like you said, some bodily harm or threat, or they're psychotic break, I don't know what could be happening. Like what do you do? I mean, obviously you gotta call and make sure everybody's safe as possible, but you don't wanna sit in the car and get, hurt, if there's threat. I mean, my experience is limited, if I'd be driving the clients around in the van and, if it's starting a mutiny was happening or something, and then there was threats, and, it would be like, okay, where they'd call me, you pull over, you don't move until nobody's moving, unless, you do your de-escalation or prevention, but other than that, you just call 911. Or we had a situation, because we do review the situations where the staff happened to be in the facility, drove right into the police station. Boom, right there, right in the police station parking lot. So, any other ideas? If you leave the car, take the keys, that's what you had, okay. Okay, next page, Enosis Drive, just a quick scan. Page 4, to and from your car. Looking for dangers, what could be happening. Just scan through that. Sounds crazy. Changing arenas. Obviously, we know that. Do you have all hands-free availability on your cell phones? Anybody have difficult time working in the community where you are threatened or get into a situation where something dangerous has happened? Anybody have it? What happened?
I did counseling with families and children and the projects, and there was a lot of gang activity right near where this family lived.
Yeah.
And a gang member, it was a retaliation, and he got executed by drive-by.
Yeah.
And when I went there, it was all blocked off. I couldn't get, I had to go through the back door. And
So she had to go through a crime scene.
Yeah.
Crime scene. So not knowing, what's going on. Those drive by. Okay, any other suggestions you give for that section on to or from your car, or any other thoughts or questions? And I asked about that tracking, because I know on all our company vehicles, we have tracking capabilities to find out exactly where every vehicle is at any point in time, and how long it is engaged at a certain area, and where it is and where they should or should not be. So
We're not using company vehicles.
no, I know you're not. So when I was thinking of tracking,
Yeah.
you know, if all of a sudden someone is like,
Yeah.
something's up, we haven't heard from them, where are they? So that's why I was thinking of that for the, you know.
It would be nice if there was a button on the phone that could like press the button.
Yeah,
Track.
well, I put that in. I don't know.
They do have
Dream
those
is-
apps.
They do.
have safety apps like that,
Yeah,
that
okay.
a lot of agencies use.
Can't be as expensive as years back. They were so expensive, but they can't be as
Yeah, they're
now.
just like an app.
I don't know, we'll just come up with ideas. Apps on the phone. Okay, so we're talking about, this is the animal, okay? Anything else? Approaching the home or facility, anything else in that section? Okay. Make sense? Listen before you knock or ring the doorbell, adapt your eyes. Stand at the side of the door, someone may be coming out. Don't walk in if the door is open. Don't walk in if a voice calls come in and you don't know who it is. They're just little tidbits. These helpful or not, or you already know. I don't care, Ann. It's Thursday. Okay. And then we got the whole thing. I was excited about the animal thing, okay? Because they had a whole section in the NIOSH brochure on animals. Be careful, right? And I like I'm going to put some more things in here around all the infection control and things of sitting and because it did have a whole section that took out on infection control in the home and things of that nature. Obviously, you're going to have your ID cards. You don't have any last names on them, which is great. The other thing I had thought about is, I know I talked about in antiviolence training, legally we're not required, I don't know if your contract, but legally, in most contracts, you're not required to give your last name. And we even went through this years ago when we were doing some policy development, especially working with the nursing board, because there's always this thing, you have to have your last name. You're servicing patients. You have to have your last name. When we started taking the last names off the badges, we really had this discussion. Technically, you're not required to give a last name unless the client wants to file a formal complaint or grievance, which they never do, right? So that is also. Do you refrain from giving your last name? No. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. It's different at every agency, but I know we have that in our anti-violence policy. I know for myself as a clinician, I very rarely give my last. I can't even remember the last 8 years I gave my last name to a client. Can't read my signature if they see it, but so we don't have to. But I don't know how long you're spending with them, how close you get to them, but you never know what's going to happen. Or if another family member is not happy, finds out. People can find out where we are, what we're doing at any point in time. So. Has that come up for people? Some people here said they don't give their last names or, yeah?
I worked at Plymouth County Correctional Facility, I was a nurse there, and they call you by last name.
Yeah.
So it was like medical officer Buttrick. And so this kid knew me, and I grew up with him, and he told the whole unit my address.
Oh, great.
And,
Come on over.
oh, it was awful, it was so scary, but there's like steps you can take, like to filing, because I was in the correctional setting, I had a way to file all that, but you can go to like the police department, and if they were to ever find out anything, then they actually told me if anybody was to ever come to my house, I could do something about it and I couldn't get in trouble pretty much. Like, if you had to take action for something, or call the cops and you had to hurt them in some way, you
Yeah.
can't get in trouble for it, 'cause it's filed as.
It's already on record.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you
So-
can go to the local sheriff's department,
Right.
and we've done that, no trespass. You know, in addition to restraint, is all different other levels that you can
Right.
do. Once it's on file.
Able to be protected,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, yeah, we've been
Just
involved
so,
with that.
I don't know if everybody knows.
No, that's a
that.
good piece. Did you hear that? Great. Yeah, be careful. You can always make up a
I'm
name.
scared. I don't live there anymore, thank God.
Okay, yeah. All right, anything else? Anything else? I think it's pretty standard on when walking, when talking, where they're living. So on the way, get your bearing, travel main streets, as much as possible. They're probably not on a main street. And I think keep alert and on the lookout, walking to and from your car. And a lot of times, as you had said, either securing anything you have, but even at some of our locations, we advise people, don't bring cards and don't bring money and don't bring anything. Don't leave your backpack or your purses or anything around. And yeah, it's a problem around the financial piece. The bigger piece is the identification piece, you know, because then you get into situations, or even they're going to have access. Okay, now I'm thinking this with the phones. Okay, they're going to be able to contact you, right? Make appointments, whatever they do with you, talk to you on the phone, right? So is there some disclosure with the initial contract about that they cannot attempt to contact you on Facebook or social media, something like that, and they should not assume that you're, okay, that you're available 24/7 in case they're at risk of hurting themselves, they have to contact 911, yep.
I did a position like this for South Bay for a short while, and usually for the initial intake, you clarify that and say, okay, these are the operating hours, this is when you can contact me.
Yeah.
If you contact me out of that, just leave a message and I'll contact you as soon as I'm available the next day.
Yep, okay.
Fairly
All right.
standard.
Because a lot of the legislation for the social, especially, you know, we get more into teletherapy and things like that, teleprescribing, is the importance of having a disclaimer on any kind of communication means with any client or patient to indicate, do not assume I'm monitoring this 24/7, exactly, and have them sign that. And so if you're at risk of dialing if you're at risk of hurting yourself, you know, whatever you have on there, dial 911 or like you hear on the phone. Because there's been a tremendous amount of litigation around that for people who are doing any practitioners doing type of teletherapy or consultation or anything, and the regulations, even internationally, are getting more stringent. So that important thing about what they should or should not be doing, and please do not attempt to contact me on Facebook. Because if there is a contact, and you read different social networking regulations by different licensing boards, that if there is an attempt to contact, some licensing boards will suggest that, obviously you're going to block them, but some will suggest that you indicate to that person initially, please do, you know, so they don't feel they're being rejected and neglected and all of that. Please do not, I'm blocking you. It's against our ethics policy. Please do not contact me again for via social media. It's like if they showed up at your door. Do you know what I'm saying? It's against our ethics policy. Please do not come by my neighborhood again. No, I'm only kidding. But what were you going to say?
I was going to say, in addition to that, usually you can say, like, besides calling 911, you give them the crisis helpline.
Yes, whatever numbers you have. Whatever numbers you have, yeah. And it's nice to have that listing when that prints out. Okay, we're almost done. All right, anything else? If there's anything else that you can think of, okay? We've got prevention, intervention for violence, okay? Again, we're on page 6. Here we talk about personal space. We talk about touch. What do you do if you go in and there's a conflict going on in the home? Leave. Okay. What do you do? Any domestic violence going on in the home? Yes, okay. So all of this was put in here. And then I want to mention, and this is just for, and I'm sure many of you have been doing this for a while, but if you are working for High Point, there is tremendous policy, I suggest, and the CPI trainers are supposed to review this, called the calming policy. It is about a 15-page centering policy for individuals who are escalating, preventing escalation or intervention after escalating behavior or an acting out situation that has been put together by our, right now our VP of nurses who works here at the psychiatric hospital, and a couple of our trauma specialist directors. And it's very good. I was going to bring copies and I gave you the handout, but it's called a calming policy. And it's tremendous. You know, different things that will work when you're right there with the person that we know. Centering does such amazing job of diffusion and bringing them back into the here and now. Everything from flavors of candy to tactile to smell to colors to all kinds of stuff that you could probably have in your little bag of tricks. And obviously you're going to have the history, past reports of violence, and then you already talked about what's going on, if there's drug use going on, who knows. And I also had a question about weapons on page 7. Please take a look at this, and again, if you have any ideas, or this is a stupid statement, cross it off, add something in, give it to your supervisor, and we'll just keep getting better. But on number 7, just scan down those, because you do this all the time, you're experts at this. And here it talks about a little bit about distraction, and then the grounding techniques are also there. There was some things in the NIOSH book about actually like taking a client for a walk, and this whole section of where you take them for a walk, don't take them for a walk, and then there was controversy. Do you ever take the client out for a walk if they're starting to escalate? Yes. Then it was how far you take them, where do you take them for a walk? So we just left it simply in there. But other times that there have been problems when the PDs got back where they ended up in not a good place and there was an altercation in the community. So it's just individualized. But also, if a weapon is involved, there were some suggestions here, is, again, there was a sample contract that indicated that, and it was a community-based setting, that the client needed to sign off that if they had any weapons, they would not be in the home when the visit was occurring. Now, that was pretty stringent. We don't have anything like that. Is anybody, any agency that's done this in the past? What have you done with the weapons?
Usually, again, when we take the processing intake,
Yep.
They would have to sign a release saying, you know, at any point in time, whether we were meeting in public or at their house, that they were agreeing
Yep.
that, they were not having weapons on their person.
Yep.
Or in the home when we were there. If that was to be found out, that session would be immediately terminated, and their account with us would be gone over, or possibly terminated or transferred to another.
Is that something that's come up? Is that something in our contract now with them? Anything about weapons in the home? Is there anything you think it might be helpful to talk about that? No?
I had one circumstance where we found out that there were kids coming to the child's house with guns to find him, and the clinician and I decided we weren't going back to the house until we knew it was safe.
Until you know it was safe.
We found a safer place to visit where we have the aunt and stuff with
Yeah.
us. It's like, I don't know if there's a written policy about weapons, but
I
if
don't
I
know.
knew there were weapons in the house,
Yeah.
I'm not going.
You're going.
Period.
If you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I know. And you can ask, but are they
Yeah.
gonna tell you?
So I don't know, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, sign, not sign, brief, but to think about the weapon piece, all right, because many people have weapons, you know, I know it's really hard. I mean, try to get the person to voluntarily empty bullets from the gun or roll and throw them out of their reach if they happen to, you know, have a weapon and they're making some type of threat. It got into real, you know, things. I only had to do that once with a client I was working with who was, had a weapon on them, who didn't know and was suicidal. But anything under if a weapon is involved, does any of that make sense? What do you think about that?
I think you should just leave. Get it
Just
out.
leave.
Just get it out.
Yeah, but nothing ahead of time indicating that, you know, weapons should be secure and please do not, you know, be.
We don't have anything like that.
Warning, please be aware, and I know you know, there's all kinds of reporting. Anytime there's threat I'm sure in many agencies too, but in our anti-violence policy, first of all, if you're injured by a client, all right? Obviously, you're going to do an accident report, right? Obviously, if you have any kind of threat or assault or serious threat, we have sections in the client incident report policy. In the anti-violence policy, there is another form that we've included that anytime an employee feels vulnerable or there's a perceived or a serious threat, no injury, okay, no client involved, maybe a client involved, could be a family member involved, could be anybody involved, complete that report. Because there's a lot more going on everywhere people will say, well, geez, we're walking around with their cliff chart doing reports all day. But that one piece that we've never collected all these years that the anti-violence policies, regulations have suggested is a document that is just for an employee. You fill out anytime that it's happened with anybody that goes through our safety committees for review so we can help people feel safer.
Where would we find those forms?
It's in the anti-violence policy. So there's an anti-violence policy, which is an HR policy. And then obviously you have the accident report policy if you get injured on the job in any capacity. And then there is a client incident report policy. You know,
And they're all in the anti-violence?
those two are not. The accident one and the anti-violence is an HR policy, and obviously the client incident report is a clinical policy. Okay? That's just, I'm saying here. Yeah, so wherever you go, but the importance of, let me just say, as a CPI trainer and reviewing all the things that come up, when I do refreshers, when we go over actual things that happen, people are so busy, a lot of stuff gets reported, but probably more doesn't. And we're saying, this is happening out here. We've got to do something about this, what's going on with these staff over here. And so that piece of information was never collected. So we incorporated that actually into the reporting requirements, capture that in between. So, all right, what do you think? All right? Thank you. I think you're on, all right? And tell me, hold it up there.